Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today are Joel Elston and Sam Page.
This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Didn't have an intro for it, but we also have Luke Mortaza joining us today. So we have like four guys here, all in the studio at the same time, trying to find out, do we believe in the biology of belief? We're going to find out real shortly. So Joel, first of all, hello. How you doing?
Hey, how are you? Good morning.
Fine. Now this is, you've been coming up with really great topics lately, by the way. And I know they're based on books you've been reading. And of course, this is a book that we all have known about for quite some time, The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. But you're kind of our expert on that one. So I'm going to give the mic over to you and let you do kind of the lead off on that. Give us a whirlwind tour of what this book is all about.
Okay, well, it covers so much and so many concepts. The premise that mainly it hits on is for years we've always thought genetics were the dominating force in human health, behavior, personality, and everything. What you inherited from your parents is pretty much you're destined to happen. If you have bad genes, you have bad genes. If you have a propensity for breast cancer or certain cancers, you're likely going to get it. And that was the prevailing thought for many, many years. And when they started doing the Human Genome Project and they were decoding the human genome, they had a couple wild surprises. Before they got to humans, they were studying that of a very basic worm. And this worm has a very tiny, it had 23,000 genes. And that was sort of the baseline. This is a very basic worm. It eats, poops, breeds, and dies. It's pretty much
it's pretty straightforward.
Sure. Yeah. So that's all the functioning of this worm. So this worm had 23 genes. So we're assuming, okay, well, humans are going to need at least 100,000 genes. It's going to be a necessary amount based on what we were thinking. So before they moved to humans, they went to the fruit fly, which has been studied in experiments for years and years and years. So they were expecting the fruit fly, which is a much more advanced organism than the worm. It certainly was going to be more in theory than the basic worm. And I'm using the word basic worm because I cannot pronounce what that worm is. So
well, we won't hold it against you.
Yeah, it's a really long name. So, but shockingly, the fruit fly had only like 17,000 genes. And it was a much more complicated, animal or species than the worm. Mm-hmm. So that blew them away. So they didn't know what to make of that. Assuming that, and then when they started undoing they were predicting the decoding of the human genome to take many, many years. And shockingly, they announced pretty quick they were done, because the number of the human genes were 24,000, which is just a little bit more than the most basic worm. So that started a whole new concept in thinking. How can that be? So the understanding that genes are influenced and they're not fixed. They can be determined to do anything. A stem cell, for example, adapts to what it needs to be. So gene expression can take place in many different ways. So that started this process of, this is where Dr. Bruce Lipton started going against his peers and saying, wait a minute, we're assuming a lot of things about genetics that are not true. So as we move forward, we start seeing everything, and he started realizing there are some people who have the same gene that indicates you might have a propensity for breast cancer. How come some people get breast cancer and some people don't? Yeah. So that started a really interesting thing. A lot of it had, surely there was going to be a commonality, and there really wasn't. A lot of it had to do with, we're assuming maybe a certain chemical we were exposed to made that gene expression of breast cancer appear. So let's find that common chemical. Couldn't find it. And so we kept going and doing different things. We kept looking on different, trying to figure it out. And somebody along the way started thinking about, well, maybe it's the expression of the gene is built on your perspective of the gene, and what you believe. So he started a deep dive, which is really, he was considered a whack job for a long time because he was saying, your perspective sort of dictates what happens to you, which is, it sounds familiar, sort of what we believe.
Yeah.
So, as he started unfolding and it became more and more accepted, there are influences on the genes, like the environmental influences can change the expression of a gene. Somebody who's, has a perspective, they're very healthy, they work out, they do all these things, they just keep going forward. The body sort of responds to, that's what the expectation is. And so that opened up a lot of different, concepts, and it went into great detail, and when you listen to the book, it's very scientific, and I'm just trying to make it as simple as for this discussion as we want to do. But we have within us, our perspective sort of dictates our reality, is what I've always said about the law of attraction. So as far as the body responds, that's very, very true. There's people, I've always been fascinated by, I know some very high IQ people. So when, 160 IQ folks, really, really wildly intelligent by how they measure intelligence. But, and these are great people. So a couple of them may be listening, so I'm not going to really insult them too bad, but
well, actually I'm one of them, just to mention it. I'm just saying mine was 162.
Okay. Oh, wow. So unfortunately for you have a balance, but I know a lot of people with higher IQs that tend to lack common sense or social acuity or whatever. And I've always been fascinated about that. And also I work with several young people who grew up in horrible situations of foster care, and they were classified as having very low IQs, like 75, 80, the lower end, that were wildly successful in school and went on to Harvard and did great things. I know one young man that was in foster care that went on and got a scholarship to Columbia. He's a medical doctor now with an alleged 74 IQ.
Which just goes to show how useless IQ is, but that's another topic.
Yeah, that's another topic. But when you look at the environment he grew up in and all that took place, so healthy people can become healthy a lot of times because they believe they're healthy. And the environment you believe, the negative environment or the positive environment you grow up in, has a great influence. When we're born, we're already born with the programming that has taken place while we were before we were born, and the genetics that go together. There's certain coding that got sent through, but how it expresses is really just fascinating to me. So the value of reading this book to me, I call this sort of the science of the law of attraction. When you have people questioning your perspective dictates so much, you look at this, and this is sort of a scientific explanation of how that could happen. Yeah. And to me, the book didn't get into this, but I believe this not only translates to your body and health, but also, your satisfaction in life. And, the commonality that for a long time in this study, they were talking about some people are born happy is what the belief was. So let's find a happiness gene. And they found a gene that was common in happy people. However,
oh, really?
But ironically, everybody that had the happy gene wasn't happy, and everybody that didn't have the happy gene, so they kept getting into rabbit holes. They kept, is that me? Oh, okay. Well, that wasn't bad. That wasn't our bad.
Yeah, we got you back faster that time. That was good.
Yeah. So the epigenetics is a term that the DNA we have is changeable based on environment, perspective, thought. And that's where it gets fascinating for me. So epigenetics is the ability to determine how your genes express, not necessarily what you were born with. Some, not mentioning anybody in particular, but a lot of people lose their hair. So hair loss is genetic. I haven't heard anybody clicking off that genetic code yet, but I'll let you know when that comes out. But that's a possibility.
Well, actually, I can show you once again. Now, you were talking a moment ago how there are exceptions on these things, and I'm an exception in my own family. Literally, my entire family is bald except me.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's an example. Yes.
Every single male I can think of that's either alive or past is bald except me.
Yeah. And I see that within families. I see, there's always, there's anomalous events. So the one thing we know is you can't put everybody into one box.
Right.
You can't put every situation into one box. And that's what science tries to do. So I love it when we keep finding new things that throw monkey wrenches into what they believe is fact. But he gets also into what Walt, one of our favorite topics is. He gets deep into the value of the placebo effect.
Yeah.
And he goes into a deep dive on that toward the end of the book. So the biology of belief just brings to us I recommend everybody read it. Like any book we're going to be talking about, I think it's worth reading. But instead of getting lost in the weeds, I just want we're using it as a template to sort of understand what he's talking about and how it may apply to the law of attraction.
And there's an interesting thing in there too, because you mentioned how they were in the studies that he was discussing in the book. They were discovering environmental influences on genetics, which kind of throws a monkey wrench into the whole nature versus nurture debate that has been going on for the longest time, because maybe it turns out that it affects both of them. Like, okay, well, what do you do with that?
Well, and that's the beauty of it. It's a combination. It's one of those things that you have no idea because there's the rules are almost meant to be broken. It's like one does this, and I work with two twin boys. I've talked about them on the show before. They were 16 at the time, 17 at the time, and their father was a severe alcoholic. I mean, just ended up in jail, tried to kill their mom. A really bad story. So at 16, one of the boys was already an alcoholic. He was drinking heavily and had to be taken into treatment. The other one was absolutely would not touch alcohol for any reason. These are identical twins. Identical.
Right. That's the kind of thing that people, scientists like to study them because they're identical.
Yeah.
Here they are getting different results completely.
Yeah. So I met with them each individually before the one went off the treatment. And I asked the one with alcoholism, I said, what is, why do you think you drink? And they go, my dad did. Of course I'm going to drink. And I asked the one that didn't drink, I said, how come you don't drink? And he goes, because my dad did. The same answer.
Right.
So you see where I'm going with that. It's like, again, they both, assuming there's an addiction gene. I mean, I don't want to get into that big debate because I can do 2 hours on that. But let's assume there's something that gives you a propensity to addiction. So, but it doesn't go with everyone. My father, my biological father, was a really hardcore compulsive gambler. My biological grandfather was a severe alcoholic. It both created terror and chaos in my life as a child. I was really guarded against the alcohol. I was like, absolutely, there's just, that was devastating. But I just sort of dismissed the gambling as that can't be real. And I ended up having a gambling addiction.
Right.
And never really developing an alcohol addiction. So it's just, again, expression and perspective and, the anxiety brain that we tend to have around anxious parents this is programming that no matter how hard we try, that it is with us on some degree forever. And that's a really interesting thing. It doesn't mean we can't overcome it, doesn't mean we can't process it. But one of the things he mentions, which I love because it's sort of a Abraham Hicks statement, is sort of what I'd use in my practice. And this will be controversial to therapists, traditional therapists a lot of times, but he's pretty much like, you're spending too much time on the history of what happened. You're stuck on all that. There is not going to be an answer you want to hear. It happened and it influenced you. Now it's time to creating new things to influence you. You're never going to undo that stuff. And that was a really strong statement that he made that I actually sort of subscribe to on some level. Doesn't mean I don't believe you shouldn't address things, but I think at some point you do have to put a period behind them and move on. And he touches on that.
Well, one of our listeners in the live stream has posed a question, and it's actually flashing back to a topic we talked about, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, here on the Tuesday show. But she says, neurogenesis through psychedelic therapy is a component that may have a place in the history of the human race and could have played a huge role in biogenetics. Would you agree or disagree with that? And she was addressing it to all four of us.
What do you think, Walt?
You mean in one minute or less? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as many minutes as you need.
Oh, okay. Well, clearly the answer's got to be yes. Just because anytime that you're talking about psychedelics, and we were talking about that a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the psilocybin. You're talking about something that has a demonstrably recorded role in human brain development. It's not clear necessarily exactly how that played out. Scientists are going to debate that for quite some time, but the evidence is clear that it has happened. So, of course, it's got to be a component in the history of the human race. And it kind of makes sense that it plays a role in biogenetics. The question in my mind is, and this kind of leads into something I was going to ask you about, Lipton brings in the topic of epigenetics, which there are a lot of different ways you could define that word. I would kind of define it as being beyond genetics.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious to know how you would answer that part of the question. In other words, this whole idea of neurogenesis through psychedelic therapy, touching biogenetics. How is it touching epigenetics? To me, that's the more interesting question, because to me, that's the bridge.
Yes. And that becomes as I mentioned, if you review that episode, I talked about my personal experience with psilocybin,
right,
in a therapeutic setting. And and it's really hard to use words for that thought process. So I'll try my best, but it is absolutely, without a doubt, the epigenetic, in my mind, you got genetics, you got the epigenetics beyond the genetics. I like that. The concept of your mind is so open during the process that in my mind, your brain is very, very, workable. Like we use the word neuroplasticity a lot, but the same kind of basic concept. So when you're in that state of psychedelics, I think it literally allows gene expression to be affected, because you're at least, with that's proven with cancer patients. Now, they didn't use that word, but like with cancer patients that are dying and are horribly just fearful of everything. One dose of psilocybin therapy said their fear of death goes away. So you literally intervene on one of the most basic fears that's really built into us. You intervene on that, and most of them report, because once they're exposed to it, they don't believe that this physical body is the end of everything. So they're welcoming that next chapter. So anyway, we could do that whole show, but I completely agree. And my answer to her question as asked is yes.
Yes. Just a solid yes.
Yes. Yes, completely.
Yes, it is affecting it. Yes, it plays a huge role. Yes, it's part of the written history. Yes.
Yes.
Let's go to these guys.
Go ahead. Joe Rogan does it. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We just got to stop talking over each other. That's all. I mean, if we stop talking over each other, it'll all work.
Yeah, there you go. Joe Rogan has one of his podcasts is about the ape theory and psychedelics and how that could have changed that. So again, I don't want to get too deep in that. It gets way down a rabbit hole, but it's along what she's asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to Sam and Luke, because you guys have been kind of sitting quietly and listening and absorbing. And I'm going to go to Sam first. What's your take, Sam? What are you gathering from this and saying, "Oh, I like that"?
So are you referring to the question that our listener asked, or just in general?
You can address the question that the listener asked. It could be just simply about the book itself, whatever's grabbing your attention the most, really.
Well, as far as her question, I don't have as much knowledge, but I am inclined to agree that with everything you guys have said, from what I understand. But yeah, the biology of belief is very interesting, and it definitely is oriented with law of attraction in its way, because, beliefs creating your reality, and also it just kind of influences your frequency. And I think I keep on seeing a message pop up every once in a while that what the universe responds to is your frequency, like where you're actually vibrating rather than what you're consciously thinking. So I feel like that might also kind of align with that. So I find that interesting, and I think that's worth looking into. I haven't read the book, but I just might.
It's worth reading. It's in depth. You have to be ready for it. It's scientific, but it's also written somewhat with the idea of this is the general public reading it rather than a fellow biologist. So you have at least some chance of understanding it, which is good.
that is the point when I read things.
And Luke, what's your take so far? What are you latching onto at this point?
Everything. So the DNA, the biology of science of biology, that concept already resonates with me because I already use my own like meditations to heal myself. Just imaginary fairies that literally, again, to the regular people, I just call it a delusion. I prefer delusion over
you beat them to the punch, is what you're saying.
That's my medicine. So I've experienced it. I've healed myself. I've healed myself from an allergy, from a cat. I've felt it go out of me. So I know there is something in there that I am able to heal within myself, and I have control. It's just connecting with my tiny little cells and just kind of like knowing they're on my side and using them as my teammates and just connecting with them, and then somehow like that turns into a fairy, and the fairy just goes and heals again. I'm a unicorn that just thinks differently, and it's really easy for me to visualize that. And
I love that you call them your teammates. That's cool.
Yeah, like they're on my side, and I just have to like give them like a little pep talk, like sorry, I've been kind of lazy, like it's my own fault that I'm feeling this way, but I need you guys' help right now to get me healed up real quick, cause like and I'm intentionally healing, putting all of my focus on whatever the pain is, and just me believing that it works allows it to work, and it tends to work, and anytime it doesn't work is anytime I realize it's anytime I have a doubt about anything. But again, it's just trusting in the magic, and the magic is real for me. And then as far as the psychedelic experience, like I have experienced that myself, and I have experienced conversation with quote unquote death and overcame the fear of that and met like 7 versions of myself and then the perfect version of myself. Like I've had weird, unique experiences, and I'm just, while I'm in them, like my human self gets like curious and like gets distracted. Like, hey, if I'm watching myself, who am I right now? And then I end up like coming out of it and whatnot. But I do end up like, it does open up my mind to like a lot more things. And I already have kind of an imaginative mind. And it was not too long ago I experienced that, but it was very interesting. Like it really took me on this journey that like Joel was saying, it's really hard to explain in regular human words.
Joel, do you get the feeling it would be great to have Luke on hand when you're talking to a client and you're trying to help them understand stuff? I mean, it's almost like he's already got it. Here, like, let me just transfer some of this to you.
I love the idea of creating a team, whatever you want to call that team, of energy, of spirit healers, of fairies, of angels. The wording is not relevant as much as is understanding.
Whatever resonates with you.
Exactly. And so the You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza, great book where he talks about, he literally healed a very traumatic back injury with thought alone. And over several months, and it was unheard of. And he's healed without back pain, and this was a very traumatic event. So it is doable, and the body is capable of anything that you can bring to the table for it, and it will rally. It's on your side. Your energy and your cells, they want to be healthy. They're not trying not to be healthy, but there's sometimes you have to rally the troops, so to speak, and help them get on the same page. And I love how you said that. You go to them and say, look, I've been a little lazy. How about help me out here? You pull me out of this. That's a really cool way of looking at it.
I take ownership of like when I'm not like intentionally, because like I try to be intentional about what's happening. Sure. And then when I get on that autopilot mode and I was like, okay, I manifested this. Okay, this is an experience and I've come to a mindset where I'm thinking there is no accidents anymore. Whatever experience is an experience. The good and the bad, I can figure out that later. But whatever I'm facing right now is my own creation. So I can totally overcome it.
That's amazing. I love that.
It is excellent.
I love your whole perspective, Luke. And I think that's also a great thing to keep in mind, is that anything that you encounter is your manifestation, and taking that accountability is a great way to move forward and working through it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm curious to ask all three of you guys. I mean, I know what the bias is going to be here. It's going to be a bias very much in the direction that I like, but I'm also curious to know what your take is going to be. In each of your individual opinions, what are the limits in terms of what we can do to heal ourselves or reverse difficult situations in our lives? In other words, is this something that has limits to it? And if so, where are they?
I would venture to say that the limit is just to the extent of what you believe. So at first I was just going to say there are no limits, but I think it's just, it's as much as you believe.
Or as much as you could comprehend at the moment, because like everything is limitless. There is no ceiling to anything. Growth is, change is inevitable. So anytime it's happening, we learn to adapt. Humans are very adaptable beings. So, like, we will be put into the worst of the worst of the worst situation, but somehow, like, we find our way out. So just knowing that, there's a solution at the end, no matter how hard it is. It's just, I don't know, faith is that it's just, I'm the one, after that soul kind of person already, it's been always easy for me to, like, focus on, and therefore I manifest really good people. So, like, I talk about people being good. A lot of times people, like, there's a lot of bad people. I was like, good and bad in every single culture, race, everything, but I tend to only interact with them once because I think there's more good. The more good comes my way.
Okay. How about you, Joel? What do you think?
Well, I sort of agree with both of my colleagues here. I like the concept that I would love to say there's no limits, but clearly there is. And I believe that, like, I've never seen anybody grow an arm back. So I don't think I can heal that arm growing back. Now, I'm not saying that someday we can't. I'm just saying within our perception of reality right now, that hasn't, one of the things. I have seen people cure themselves from stage 4 pancreas or liver cancer, which is unheard of. I have seen people that were declared dead wake up fine. I mean, I've seen a lot of things happen. So I think everything is belief that is based on what our mind can comprehend. I often use the 4-minute mile example. Did a week or two ago with Sir Roger Bannister breaking it. Within 2 weeks of him breaking it, multiple people broke the 4-minute mile. It was unbreakable until he broke it. Then now it's high school times, So it's the same thing with this. It's the more we believe, the more, and the people we surround ourselves with. If you're always around a negative energy, then you're going to always be brought down to that lowest common denominator. As Luke's saying, if you're around that positive energy, you're going to have more. You're going to be what is around you. If you're hanging around rich, successful people, you tend to be rich and successful. It's just how it works.
Yeah, I love what all three of you are saying. And the reason I threw that question out there is, since we're talking about the biology of belief, one of the first things that's going to come to many people's minds, kind of like what you alluded to, Joel, I don't know if anybody can really grow an arm back. And anybody who's dealing with a severe medical situation of any kind, whether it's a cancer or a heart disease or some sort of chronic condition or whatever it might be, when you're in the midst of it, I mean, theoretically, it's possible, but that's a long shot away from I'm ready to believe it. And that's the biggest challenge that anyone faces in that scenario. I'm faced with this horrible diagnosis. How do I believe my way out of it? That's really what I was aiming at. But how do we come face to face with that? How do we deal with that? Because clearly some people do. Like you were pointing out, Joel, there are people who have managed to just beat these incredible odds against them situations. And they must have done it with the power of their minds, because that's where it all begins. Like, what did they do that the rest of us couldn't figure out?
Well, I do have a great example of a gentleman. He lived in Mississippi, and he has his son was born with a very I forget the disease, but it's one of those that you're not going to live past 25.
Right.
So when the kid was about 12, his dad was diagnosed with, I'm forgetting the cancer, but was given 6 months to live with an incurable cancer. They didn't even do anything.
Right.
And he told his wife, I don't have time to die. I will be here until my son goes home or transitions or whatever term he used. And he just ignored everything, went to work every day, ate well, kept going, ignored it, just lived, just didn't give it an option to die, and just kept going. And it's sort of like his body was like, okay, I guess we just can't die now, and just kept going. And it just sort of went into remission. And the miracle story, it's very touching, having known the family. When the son was 23, he took his last breath and transitioned to the other side. And 3 days later, his dad did as well.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So he set an intention and a belief that he will live until his son moved on.
Yeah.
And he did. So I think, sort of like the law of attraction, if you believe it enough, it's, if you're, it's that same concept that I think if you can believe, but it's really hard to believe. And I'm not being critical of anyone is fighting that battle, because I imagine it works the other way too. Like, okay, I can do this, but I got a year of this unbelievable pain, and maybe there's a moment you go, I'm just ready to transition. I just don't want to do that. So that might be does that make sense? I mean, it might be.
Well, the whole thing makes sense. I mean, and there are so many examples of similar situations where people have passed away. And one comes to my mind. It's two very famous people, two actresses, Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher was Debbie Reynolds' daughter. She was also best known for being Princess Leia in the Star Wars series. And Carrie Fisher died a week or a day or something like that, a few days apart from Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah.
And they had such a tight bond, the two of them. I mean, they were as close as you could possibly be, mother and daughter. And then they passed within days of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's exactly what we're saying. It's belief, but also, again, my belief system says that we're energy, and when this is sort of an amusement park. We've come here to do what we do. We're going to transition to this side. I probably have been here 8,000 times. So, I probably.
Well, you always liked riding the roller coaster. I mean, let's be perfectly honest, you did.
Yeah. I keep predicting the craziest shit. Excuse my language. Keep getting into. So it's like that's what I do. So I have no doubt that I have this vision that whenever it is, sometime in the next whatever years, that happens, and I wake up and say, let's go again. And it's just, we're just going to just keep doing it. So with that knowledge, I could be like, yeah, well, okay, let's just wrap this up. I wouldn't fight too hard, possibly. I have shockingly, this is something not many people know. I have a do not resuscitate. I not be revived. If I go, I go.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm in perfect health, by the way. I'll probably live to be 100 easily. But it's not a negative thing, but we're just going to go. We're ready to roll if we need to.
Right. Yeah. I feel very much the same way, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you guys? What do you think?
Same here. I'm looking forward to getting older because, I'm 38 right now, so I'm going to be 39 this year. Next year, I'm going to be 40. And I'm already, excited about the 40s because it took me this long to get to this point. Because I've lived all my life, I would say in cowardice, just trying to please people and always just saying yes and putting myself in situations that I wasn't the most happiest in. But now being this version of me, I am only looking forward to what life brings me, because I feel like I'm a little bit, or maybe a lot more control of my, life than I was until within the last few years. So yeah, I feel I definitely feel like I'm going to be one of those older people that's just going to be happy and just live forever.
And with that attitude, you are going to be. That's just the way that works. Yeah. How about you, Sam?
I believe I'm kind of in a similar position and have a similar perspective on this to Luke, in a lot of ways, but definitely up until my mid 30s, I had a lot of mental health and things I was working through. But now I'm in my I'd say mid 30s, and have come a long way with my perspective and my mindset and a lot. And I feel like I'm relatively healthy in all aspects: mental health, mental, physical, spiritual, etc. And I feel like I'm in a good place to go forth into my 40s and beyond, because now I have just a much better mindset and set of beliefs working for myself. I think those are only going to develop further in a way that will serve me better as I move forward. And I feel like it can only get better from here. And I'm at a point now where I'm not fearful about aging, whereas I think a lot of people around my age, my brother just turned 40 earlier this month, and he seems okay about it now. But the first half of this year, he was very apprehensive about that. And I think that's more than more common mindset in general society, the matrix, if you will. But I'm kind of just looking forward to seeing how the rest of this human experience for me unfolds in all aspects, including the aging process. And I'm more curious than anything and kind of looking forward to it.
It's very cool. Hey, Joel, with the clients you work with, and you're looking at Sam and Luke, listening to what they're saying, you can give us a nice read on this. I'm hearing Sam and Luke, I'm saying, whoa, this is great. I'm loving this. I wonder how representative they are of their age group. But you probably have a better handle on that. I mean, are you seeing trends in this direction? I'm kind of hoping you're saying yes.
Well, people that are doing the work get here, and I love what both of you are saying. I'm 61. I am in absolute perfect health. I have no anxiety, no stress, no financial problems. I have the life that I've created. I sincerely, I wouldn't go back to being 30. My early 30s were hell. My ADD brain, depression, anxiety. I was suicidal. Just absolute crazy. And then I got into recovery from an addiction at 33, and then I started making progress, and I found about law of attraction, my brain is so much better than it was at 30. This is a really calm, my acuity, I just can't even compare the two. If you said, Joel, you could go back and be 30, I'd go, absolutely not. If I could take the brain back with me and feel like I feel now, but I feel much younger at 61, believe it or not, than I did at 30. It sounds weird.
It doesn't sound weird to me at all. I'm 66, yeah. and I still feel like I'm in my late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah, I feel great. Yeah, and I'm in the gym every day. I'm just passionate about life, and one of the great gifts as I've gotten older, and I mean this with genuine care for other people, but other people's opinion doesn't matter anymore. It's just these silly games that I used to worry about, or egos and all this, none of that matters. You like me or you don't like me or you don't care. None of that affects me at all. And it's such an easier way to live. And when you get it, the younger you get this, mid-30s is great to be getting it. And I have every now and then I run across a 20-year-old that has been through a lot. A lot of times my kids have been through a lot of traumatic stuff. They get here quicker because of what they've been through. Sometimes the stress and trauma gets them there quicker. So I love what you're saying. This is like a template for, I wish this were something taught to almost a class for people when they get into their 30s.
Yeah, I hear you. Louis D'Souza, who does the Monday shows with me and Anne Marie Young, has made the comment on numerous occasions that he believes that the schools shouldn't be teaching anything that can be found in Google. Now, maybe this can be found in Google, so maybe it shouldn't be taught, but I'm going to guess that most people aren't finding it in Google, so maybe it should be taught on that basis. Sure. But if you eliminate all that stuff that Google's got, there's a lot of room to do things like this.
Yes.
Crazy stuff. I love this. Okay, so let's get back to the book a little bit, because the book is about biology. Dr. Lipton is a cell biologist, I believe, and he's writing from that perspective. It was obviously quite revolutionary. You described it very nicely in the way you gave us the introduction earlier, Joel, about how he was resisted when he first came out with these ideas. I personally find it not only fascinating, but energizing to have somebody who has the scientific viewpoint bringing us the idea that our beliefs attach and not just attach, but affect our cells, the way our cells develop, the way they grow, what they do, what activities they engage in. My sister-in-law told me something that I've repeated many times here on the show, and I'll bring it up again because I'm just fascinated by it. She talks about how with all the ways that we can, test things in the laboratory, you can take a person, you can wire them up from head to toe with all the different ways that we can measure things in the human body and basically detect from the moment that they have a thought down to the point where either healing or cell destruction happens at a disease point or at an injury or something like that. And regardless of which way you go, whether it's a happy thought or a sad thought, it's a happy thought, 90 seconds later, that part of the body is healing. And if it's a sad thought, 90 seconds later, that part of the body is self-destructing. And I think to myself, 90 seconds. 90 seconds after we think about something, the nature of that thought process is directly affecting our body every single day. Wow.
It's incredible. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I find it fascinating. Again, the biology is just like you're saying. There's a lot of scientists that would really not like us saying that because it sort of steps away from it's hard to measure that. So, the
Yeah.
idea
Well, that's
that,
the apple cart.
yeah, exactly. But when you look at tangible proof, I told a story long time ago on the show about real short. I'll give a synopsis. Superintendent uh, in a New York City office building, originally from Greece. Very very
Hmm.
stressful job. Was diagnosed with liver cancer, incurable. Instead of treating it, his family, him and his wife, decided to move back to Greece so he could die there. Uh,
Mm.
and he went back to Greece, and his sole goal was to plant a garden and make it to harvest. They had a
Hmm.
beautiful home in Greece, a lot of family, friends, no TVs, eat just real
Right.
food, good
Right.
wine, that stuff. And
Right.
turns out the man lasted, he's still alive. He lasted 40 harvests. Uh, he's never died. It's just what we get very stressed. The immune system gets very challenged, and stuff comes along that normally it would fight off, but when you're constantly stressed, you can't fight it off. When you remove that anxiety, remove that, and let the body do what the body does, you're good. You're good.
Let's talk about stress for a minute, because I think that's an important point. And by the way, the signal kind of broke there, but I think what you were saying is, despite the fact that he had this short-term prognosis, he's still alive today. He broke through all that, and he's basically breaking all the records, which
Sure.
is fantastic. Yeah.
Sure.
But on this topic, let's see, what was the topic again? I just blew it out of my head.
I think you said stress.
Oh, stress. That's right. Yes.
Stress.
Let's talk about stress for a second, because there are people who come here onto the show and talked about how they believe there are two different kinds of stress. One kind being what you might call a good kind of stress, and another kind being a bad kind of stress. The good kind of stress being the one that helps fuel you and helps you achieve things you would not otherwise achieve, whereas the bad kind of stress is the one that tears you down and it makes you susceptible to disease and so forth. That opinion has been expressed in a number of different ways, but fairly consistently. I'm curious to know what you guys think about that. And I'll kind of reserve my opinion for the end. But Joel, what's your take on it? Is there such a thing as good stress and bad stress? Oops.
I think it fits perfectly with the topic. It's your perspective of the stress that determines what stress is.
All right.
That makes sense?
Okay. So how you think about the stress
Yeah.
basically determines how it's going to play out.
Yes.
All right. Okay. What do you guys think?
That is pretty much exactly what I was thinking. Or going
Okay.
a matter of perspective and I guess mindset as well. And I guess you can reframe how you, just reframe your whole take on the stress, and you can kind of make it into something positive if you're really.
Yeah. How about you, Luke?
I've never thought about the concept of good stress, so this is a new concept for me. But when you said that, thing that came to my mind is I work really well under pressure. So if there's a due date, I can get stuff done. I will procrastinate, but then I still get it done. So I guess that could be considered the good kind of stress that gets the work done. So I guess it does work.
I love what all you guys are saying, and particularly to jump off of what Joel and Sam were saying, the thing that jumps out to me about the word stress is the fact that it has multiple meanings in the English language. One of those meanings has to do with pressures on the body, so to speak, the body receiving pressures that impede its ability to operate. But another meaning of the word stress is to place emphasis. So if I'm talking to you, I may stress something. And because I'm doing it with passion, there's a stress going on there. So if I tie that into what Joel and Sam were saying, then it really comes down to, well, how do I feel about what I'm saying? If I feel good about what I'm saying, then it's a, quote, good kind of stress. If I don't feel good about what I'm saying, then it's a, quote, bad kind of stress. So once again, like you guys were saying, what do you believe about it? I think it's a beautiful way of summarizing. It's great.
That's exactly, and when I go to the gym, I stress my body. I put it under incredible stress, and that's a positive. I do that. I voluntarily go do that to my body, and my body responds to that stress by getting stronger. There are many times that I work with several pro athletes, and we change the perspective of stress to fuel them. Stress, it's not a defeating mechanism. It gets everything. Stress has a biological function used properly that can make you more acute, more aware, can tune you in. Stress gets the body prepared. And for the sake of what I normally say, and this is not an accurate statement, but it does help. I separate stress being more of a normal encounter and anxiety being something that's a little more, can be more damaging, but that's not scientific. Just I explain it to people that way.
That's a useful distinction, though.
Yeah.
Distinguishing between stress and anxiety, because when you express it that way, it's pretty clear there is a difference between the two.
Yes. And anxiety is when the body's responding to a threat, and it shuts down and it can't respond. Stress is what gets you up when you realize you got to be at work at 9 o'clock and your alarm didn't go off. It's 8:10. That gets you rolling. That stress gets you that gets you going. You're tired, but you wake up real quick and get going. The 2 weekends ago, we were down in North Carolina, Justin and I was driving. We were driving down there, and I was going at night, and I was going, I'd say a little faster probably than the speed limit was.
Just a tad. Okay.
And so we're in the middle of nowhere, and I'm going, and this on the side of the road, this state trooper just turned his lights on. And I immediately, now he didn't chase me. He was just letting me know, I see you and I'm not going to bother with you, but slow down. And so I went from whatever my higher speed was, which was a little bit higher, and then I went down to the 60 mile an hour. But at that point, now my focus on the road was more intense. I'm sitting up. There was a whole, I was just subconsciously driving down there, and there was nobody in front of me, and I'm on the straight road. It's hard to do 60 on a straight road where there's nobody in front of me. It's really hard. But once I was able to see those lights, I had no problem hearing that.
Well, that also brings another thought to my mind. We talked about good stress versus bad stress, but emotions fall on a whole range of what they call the emotional guidance scale. Abraham Hicks coined that phrase, the emotional guidance scale. And it illustrates very nicely that there are negative emotions and there are positive emotions, but they are at different degrees, if you will. They're at different levels of vibration.
Sure.
And therefore, I think it's fairly safe to say that there are going to be different levels of stress. There are going to be vibrational impacts of stress. And depending on where the vibration of that stress is, that's going to basically describe, is it going to be beneficial or is it going to be counterproductive?
Exactly.
Yeah. So now here's where it gets really twisty, though, because we've talked often here on the show, and indeed, especially over the last couple of years, where we've had so many guests on who have had crash and burn stories followed by Flight of the Phoenix, and share it with the world because I have these great discoveries and all that kind of thing. Become a life coach, whatever. Those stories keep playing out over and over and over again, and clearly they all illustrate one very basic fact: we learn the most from the most traumatic events in our lives. So it raises a really important question. Is there such a thing as bad stress? You went through a trauma, you don't want to go through it again, but it helped you more than anything else.
It's like everything else we talked about, Walt. It's how you view it. The incredibly chaotic, abusive childhood I had, to the addiction I had, being homeless, losing everything, going to jail, pulling myself up. All those were necessary events. I would not trade them for anything. I do not want to go through them again, but they were my journey. And I have a belief that journey was my journey to travel. And if it's, while it's happening, no way you could ever argue this is a good thing. However, in retrospect, I survived it. It made me stronger. And I own my journey. I wouldn't trade my journey for anyone, because my journey includes right now where I'm at with everything I have going on. I wouldn't be me without that. So my personal belief is, and I've lost a son. So that is never going to be a good thing in my world. I'm never going to label that. But I also understand that when TJ passed, that I rededicated my energy, and I've said I'm living for two of us now. I now live for two people. So if I don't feel like getting up in the morning for me and go to the gym, I got to get up and go to the gym for TJ. I got to go do what I do for TJ. So while I horribly miss him, that really propelled me to a level I didn't think I could achieve in life.
That's a really good point. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Partly because very recently I met somebody I had a conversation with, really, really, very lovely person, but she'd been through some pretty bad traumas in her life. And one of many really bad traumas was the loss of her son to a heroin addiction. And it really deeply affected her, as it would for anybody who's lost a child. The interesting comment that she made to me was, if you've never lost a child, you can't know what it's like. And so you can't understand why it can never get better. And I wanted to ask you about that to get your take on that.
First of all, grief and mourning is an individual thing. And so I can only speak to my experience and not hers, but I will share on my experience of what you're asking. The loss of TJ never gets better. But again, my belief system is, I mentioned earlier, when I die, I'm going to just hop up there and jump right back in. He's probably waiting there with me to jump right back into whatever we got to do next. So, it's horrible to lose a child, but he would expect me to live my life. He would expect me to go to that's how I view that. So I can't make it good, and I can't say that, but I don't live a life where that is a defining moment for me. A lot of people that have lost their children, I'm not judging, but that is a defining moment for them that never gets changed. And I hope no one listening ever has to find this out for themselves. So I'm not in any way talking about anybody else's journey, but my journey, we got to go. We got to put a foot on the gas. We got to go. We got to do this. And again, because that's what TJ would expect from me. So I used it as fuel, in a sense, to live the life that TJ couldn't live. He could never get to this level because physically in this lifetime, he couldn't get there. So I'm doing that for him and me.
So once again, it comes down to what you believe.
Yes. And I have great empathy for this lady. And so and I'm not judging her journey. I just got to be clear to say that. Yeah.
Sure.
That's just my take on this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always going to be an individual take. It can't be anything but.
Sure.
So, yeah, I've been wanting to ask you that. So thank you for the opening on that one, because that was a conversation I had a few weeks back, and it just kind of hung with me.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's see what we can do to wrap up this topic, because that's also impossible because this is a huge topic, but let's just go down one more tiny rabbit hole. We can't go too deep because we'll run out of time. But the rabbit hole I want to go down here, where the biology of belief is concerned, is the role that belief plays in our more mundane biology. I mean, we were talking about, dread diseases, dramatic situations, and so forth. But what about day-to-day life? Day-to-day, we're not dealing with being chased by lions and tigers all day. We may think we are, but in actual fact, we're dealing with, VWs on the highway, maybe. But we are nevertheless, we're still dealing with this on a more mundane level. How do each of you see that playing out? What role do you believe that our beliefs play when it comes to just our day-to-day biology?
I think the first thing that's come to mind for me is because they're like the more mundane day-to-day things, they don't have as much of our attention. So it kind of comes down more to like what we believe like at a less conscious level. And I think what we believe at a less conscious level is more true to what we really believe. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, but I wanted to put that out there to see what everyone else thinks of that or whatever.
So the subconscious actually drives more of the equation. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Luke? Joel?
Yeah, Luke.
Wait, ask the question again. I just lost
The question just has to do with what do you believe the role of belief is in terms of the more mundane kinds of biology we deal with, right? Not the extreme stuff, the traumatic stuff, the dread diseases, all that kind of stuff, but just the basic biological stuff we experience on a day-to-day basis.
I don't know. I'm going to have to let Joel go first.
Okay.
Well, Joel will have an answer. So,
always. Usually about 5 minutes long, which I love.
Yeah. So, I think the question, as you ask it, the answer is everything. Belief has everything to do with everything. And backing up what Sam says, your subconscious brain operates at about 40 million bytes per second, a million times more than the conscious brain. So you're right, subconscious brain. But the programming takes place in the subconscious by what you believe. So it's there. What you believe dictates everything from just your general day-to-day happiness, your perspective. I love what Luke said earlier. I believe in the good of people. I work with some people would deem really bad people. I see good in everybody. And I admit there's some bad stuff out there, but my filter is my biology of belief is the average person there's always good in there. A lot of things happen, make people go away. So, but I think your belief dictates absolutely everything that takes place in your life. I think it's from the most, just how you view the world. I wake up every day and love what I'm doing, and life responds by giving me my physical presence. Responds to what I believe my physical presence is. My image of myself is very healthy. My brain's fantastic, and I feel good. And that's what it is every day, every single day.
Yeah, I love that. When I posed the question, what I was kind of thinking about is, throughout our days, we experience little things that happen. I stubbed my toe. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm kind of in a nasty mood. I bumped my shin when I went to brush my teeth. Little things like that can happen. And the more that I have found in my own life that I'm able to select what I'm going to react to that situation with and what I'm going to believe about that situation, not only does it either reinforce or shift what my experience is going to be throughout the day, but it also reinforces or shifts how I feel about the event itself. So let's say I bump my knee on something. If I'm in a good enough place where I can just kind of dismiss it and it's no big deal and just change my belief into, it doesn't even hurt anymore. Or, it's nothing at all. I'm going to start paying attention to something else. It's amazing to me how fast it'll heal, or at least seem to heal. Whereas if I get all upset about it, I bump my shin and, oh my God, that hurt. And, kind of like the little kid who's, wow, because it hurts so much. It prolongs it. But it literally seems to make it physically worse. For whatever reason, the physical injury seems to last longer, take longer to heal just because of that attitude. Now, that may be just a subjective, interpretation on my part, but that's what I'm experiencing. I think that's kind of what I was hoping you guys would address to see, do you have a similar experience?
If I can touch right back on that, I do appreciate that question. And again, in the same filter, your belief does dictate the outcome when you bump your shin. I have a couple of things. One of my NFL players was playing a playoff game last year and broke his pinky. Until they were tied with 2 minutes left to go in the game, and he did not realize that's when his pinky got broke. And broke really bad. And I'm talking snapped.
Ouch.
But until the buzzer went off and they won, he didn't realize his pinky was broken.
He didn't realize it was broken. Wow.
Yeah. He didn't have time. He said, I was not going to come out of the game. He said, I might have noticed the pain, but I had to dismiss it because I had to go win. And he did. And but then he said that, it hurt like hell at that point. But going on, and he played the following week in the next game with his just taped up just because he wasn't going to miss the game. So, especially if you're really busy in your day and you bump your shin and it's a pretty good day, you're sort of in a hurry, you don't have, okay, that hurt, but move on. If you bump your shin and you're sitting around and having a pissy day anyway, why does this keep happening? And I promise something else is going to happen too. It's that's the way it rolls.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you have seen the same kind of thing. How about you guys?
Yeah. Well, once Joel mentioned it, I do think I've seen this a handful of times before where like you're doing something active, for example, playing sports, and you injure yourself, but you're so in the moment and the adrenaline's up that you don't notice it. And then all of a sudden, like after, or like the next day, all of a sudden it's like, and then it hits you. So that's kind of what that made me think of.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm the same way. Like anytime something happens, like, if I run into something or something quote unquote bad happens, I guess I've trained myself to come to a point where I just use it as a signal. Okay, again, it's my own fault. Like, what was I thinking? Or being more aware of those thoughts. Or if I don't realize it, then things around me will start going bad. Like, for example, like last Friday, I woke up kind of sad, missing my daughter from the separation, and I was just feeling really sad, and I couldn't focus on my work. And while I'm working, my computer system is just being really slow and starts like lagging and stuff. So like my mind's not at work. So I manifest a malfunction in my computer. So I end up texting my manager, hey, I have to come into the office because it was one of those work from home days. And I have to come in. And then on my drive to work, I'm having emotional moments and I'm like feeling it and I'm just allowing myself to feel. And I get to work and still the computer system's like, I log in, but like it's all blank, nothing's working. And then as soon as I leave and go say good morning to some of my friends and just kind of get my thoughts off of like the sadness, let me go see people that like love me and appreciate me. Literally talk to them for maybe a few minutes. I come back and my computer's working fine. And I was like even technology took my side and it's like, you need to like step away real quick and you need to figure out whatever's happening and then come back and then like, so like that gave me an excuse to like not work while I'm supposed to be at work. And then like, even when I got to work, I couldn't get into my system. So I went and hung out with some friends that I kind of usually would hang out with on my breaks and whatnot. When I get to good morning, and as soon as I come back, it's working. And I was like, okay, that's just me manifesting that whatever I needed at the moment, stepping away, and then like I come back, everything is just fine. As if like I couldn't even figure out what was wrong with it. Why wasn't it? It was just wrong. It was just like if somebody asked me to explain what was going on with your computer, it was just lagging. It just like the screens went blank, but I don't know why or how. But now that I think about the whole situation, it was my own antenna that was making the technology kind of mess up. So I was the one, like, I bring all of the accountability to myself. Like, what do I need to, or how do I react to this? So it ends up helping out just even, again, my delusion is what I call it to people. Is just how I explain my experiences.
Doesn't sound like a delusion to me, to be perfectly honest. It actually sounds quite real to me. And the reason I say that is because I really do firmly believe that technology is influenced by human thought. And I don't just mean in terms of it being created or in terms of what it's storing on it. I mean in terms of how the technology itself, the physical machinery interacts with a human being. In fact, I routinely will recommend to people when I'm in an IT discussion of some kind, be kind to your computers. First, because your computers will be kinder to you in terms of how you experience them. And second of all, at some point, computers are going to become sentient. It's going to be really good to have a good relationship with them when they become sentient. If we don't have good relationships, it's not going to be a happy time. So either way I look at it, it's be kind to your computer.
Yeah. And even like all of your technologies, even like my car when I'm driving my car, like, hey, I named my car Navi, which is a fairy from a game that I play.
I love it.
Navi for taking me places. Thank you for keeping me cool. Thank you for listen to music when I'm stuck in traffic. Like, again, even though she's not talking back to me, I'm still like vibing with somebody and having a good time. I used to be afraid of the rain, and rain would just freak me out. And I was like, I don't want to drive in the rain. It's too slippery. All those thoughts would freak me out. But one day I'm already and it just comes down really hard, and I'm just there. And this is after I've done a lot of work. And again, my imagination shows me each drop, like kind of saying hi to me. Hey, don't be afraid of us. Each drop, like greeting me as it was rolling down the window. And I was like, why was I afraid of y'all? So I was like, now I enjoy driving in the rain and I say hi to my little raindrop friends. And it's just, and even like at work sometimes I'll be like so bored with work. And I was like, well, I'm staring at the screen and this, again, my imagination brings a little animated character and just interacts with me while I'm doing my work.
Wow.
I love it.
It's just, yeah, my mind's just really weird and different.
Well, some of this has definitely inspired me, so, like, already prior to this.
So Joel, tie this together for us. We got to have a way to bring this whole conversation together.
Wow, I have no idea how to do that right now.
Well, that's why I handed it to you. I figured if you can't do it, no one can do it. So
my brain is pointing out that we've all said it in pretty, similar ways, but different ways. But your beliefs dictate your reality. That's it. Your reality and you're in charge. That's the beauty of it. You're in charge of your reality. And learning to, whatever conduit, whether it's, the Abraham Hicks emotional guidance scale, whether you're chatting with the raindrops or whatever you got going on, your perspective creates the reality, and the reality responds to that. And that's the bottom line for me. That's the ultimate gift that I've been given, is that knowledge, and it's what's made my life just such a joy to be in.
True that. Done. Conversation over. You did it. You put the bow on top. You did it. It was great. That was perfect. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, live streamers. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.